I'd like to call the meeting to order. All those that are able to stand, please do so and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, please.
All right, everyone's present and accounted for.
All right, the attorney called a few minutes, actually about 20 minutes ago, and said he is more likely going to be a little bit late, so there's a couple items that we might shift around in order to have his presence here. So the first thing we need to do is, one of the items is I'd like to amend the agenda with, let me kill the volume on this thing here. Amend the agenda with a document from our attorneys and add it to the new business as item J, 8J, and it is, the document is proposed amendment to minors in possession / consuming alcohol ordinance. And you should have that document that was handed out and in front of you. Add it back in. Okay, then that's the only thing I think we have to make changes on. Tammy, is there anything else that you?
No.
Judy?
Nope.
Okay. Can we get a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Support.
Moved and supported. Vote, please.
All right, Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, next item is the consent agenda approval. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I would move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Moved and supported. Vote, please.
Mrs. Chenoweth?
Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Next item is announcements and information inquiry. I wanted to let the board know in advance that we have two contracts that are due for renewal. One is a contract for the cemetery sexton and maintenance company, and they did not raise their fees. I think it's right around 3% was the increase, and that falls within the exemptions in the purchasing policy, which allows us to renew a contract. So I think most of us on the board know from the past there's not very many sextons around, and Mike, you've done a phenomenal job, I believe.
Thank you.
I didn't see any reason that we should go out for bid, and so I exercised that right to do so. The other one is the contract for snow plowing. The cemetery section, back that one, that's 3 years. Three.
Yeah.
And the next item, the contract for snow plowing, that was a 3% increase. That's for 1 year. If we choose to renew it again, we can do that. They did an extremely good job, considering that we didn't have as many pushes, but we had a lot of salting. So they did, I think they did a great job, and felt that it was worthy to renew that contract as well.
For 1 year.
For 1 year. The Highland Activity Center Health Fair is September 28th. The Highland Fall Festival is October 7th. This includes the Highland Fire Department pancake breakfast. It should be a lot of fun. Anybody want to put together a team of, how many people? 4, 5? Four people. We're having some oddball games that they're going to play with pumpkins and apples and that type of thing. So it should be interesting, and should have a good time with that. Next item is public comment. Anybody have public comment? Yes, sir. Your name and address. Stand up at the podium, please.
Dennis Raymond, 6039 Fish Lake Road.
Okay, we have 3 minutes, sir.
Okay, well, I won't be as nasty as I have been before. Anyways, I have a FOIA request for the sign on Milford and Livingston Road, and it's made out to Technology Galleries LLC. It's for $400 a month, $4,800 of our taxpayer dollars, and the address that's being billed to is Christina Hamill's business. I just would like to know more information about why it's, being billed and payments being to your wife's business.
It's not made to my wife's business.
Well, it says John Street, and I think
That's a business building, and that happens to be, the upstairs is rented out to Mr. Gaglio, who runs, Mr. Joe Gaglio,
Yeah,
who runs Technology Gallery,
right.
and that's his
But
business.
doesn't it say Christina Hamill CPN on there anywhere?
No,
It doesn't?
no.
Okay, well, how come the township, when I went to check the address, they told me it was Christina Hamill?
Because that's the building it's in.
Well, then who's running it? Where's your wife's CPA office at?
That's her office.
Okay, then the money is going to
That's
this individual.
that is a general business district,
Okay.
Highland Station District. You can have multiple tenants within a single building.
Okay.
The tenants are separate.
Okay, but I'm not asking that. I also found out that this sign could be, I thought, 3 businesses, could be monitored very simply, okay? So I guess my question is, why is we're spending $4,800 of tax money when, Tammy or Judy or anybody else can run this and you're saving $4,800 taxpayer? Is this a friend of yours?
I don't have the ability to run that sign. I don't have the technical know-how to do that.
Well, then I guess I can go and get, some of the young kids over here that can show you how, because I'm hearing from other owners that have these signs, it's very, very simple to run it. So if you want to challenge me on it, that's fine. We'll go out and we'll show you. I'll be more than happy to. I'm just wondering why we're paying $4,800 when this sign could be monitored by anybody, okay, from what I'm told, by several businesses that run their own. That's all I'm asking. Why is $4,800 of our taxpayers' dollars going there? That's all I'm asking. I'm not trying to start any trouble. I'm just trying to say $4,800 for the sign company, which there's not even a sign out in front of the building. There is no sign of this guy.
He doesn't have to have a sign.
Okay, fine, doesn't have to get another ordinance problem, I guess. But anyways, and so, he's a friend of yours, is basically what you're telling me.
Yeah, he's also on the library board. He's a citizen. He's a business owner.
Well, to me, that's kind of a conflict of interest in my opinion, but so be it. I'll just.
So I'm lining my pocket, is what you're saying.
Pardon?
I'm lining my pocket, is what you're accusing me
No,
of?
I'm just saying, I'm asking you a question of why it's going to this individual who's a friend of yours when it could be operated by anybody. And I've talked to 3 businesses, I'd be more than happy to go back to this business with Tammy and show her how easy it is.
Tell me those
Because I'm
businesses.
sure any one of
Time's
these
up.
students
Time's
are
up.
familiar. Pardon?
Dennis, your time's up.
Okay, fine. I'll wait till the end. I'm not done.
Okay. Anybody else have a comment?
I just had a question on the previous item here.
Name and address, please.
Please come to the podium.
I'm sorry. Lynn Hansford,
Stand at the podium, please,
1528
Lynn.
I don't know who's doing this. 1528 Middle Road.
She's got a knee problem.
Just a question on the fair. Is there a charge for a booth for that fair, or how does that work?
Say
Like
that-
at the
say it
fair,
again,
you have a fair that's gonna occur at the fall festival. If you have a booth there, I think you have booths at that, right? Is there a charge for the booth?
The Art Council runs that.
Oh, they
Not
do?
us, yeah.
The township doesn't?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
I'll go to them. But we don't know if there's a charge?
I don't have any
Oh.
knowledge of that particular component.
Okay.
I would say, I believe there may be like a $20 charge or something,
Okay.
but that's a standard procedure for all art fairs and everything else. See, just like Milford Memories, that wouldn't
That's all.
occur.
We're interested in getting one. I thought that was a
Oh.
township thing. Okay, thanks.
Well, ask if you can have a gratis one. Seriously, I mean, it's a good, what you want to do is a good cause, and you're not there to try and profit. The other vendors are profiting vendors, and that's why they would pay, so it'd be worth,
I'll
Put in a
look into it.
request in for
Thank you.
that.
I just wondered if it was a fee. Thank you.
you're welcome. Any other comments? All right, we're gonna move on. First item, pending business, introduction of, and this is just an introduction, so there's no vote on this at this time, if I'm correct. Is that right, Mary? We don't,
That's right.
just
No,
introduction.
you do vote on introducing it,
We vote to introduce it.
yes.
Okay. So, I guess we could make the motion. I'm talking, I might as well make it. I'll make the motion to introduce ordinance number 458, which is an ordinance to amend section 9118B in Article 5 of Chapter 9 of the Highland Charter Township Code of Ordinances regarding the appointment and hiring of probationary firefighters.
Support?
Moved and supported. Vote, please.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
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 Motion carries.
All right. Next item, our attorney is here, so we can,
Apologize for the tardiness.
You have all pass.
Note.
Almost made it.
traffic's bad in either direction, so it doesn't matter. Okay, new business. First item is a request for site-specific relief submitted by applicant 201 Lone Tree LLC to repurpose a former golf driving range facility used as a sports complex. I guess because a lot of people here have no idea what we're talking about. There's a parcel of property that was previously a golf driving range, right behind the, what's the name of the ice cream place there?
Twist and shake.
Yeah, Twist and Shake and MVP restaurant. 20+ acres, and it was sitting fallow. The township purchased it for a potential septic landing site, and we were approached by Mr. Ben Deponio to see if we might be interested in selling that parcel, with a caveat that we'd be able to retain some rights for a period of 5 years to use a portion of the property for a possible septic system. And the intent was to use the parcel for a sports facility. Our board agreed that we thought that was a pretty good idea, and we said, let's go ahead and we'll engage in that process. So we sold that parcel to Mr. Deponio and his family. Now what's come up is, in the process of doing that, we discovered that the zoning, which is residential multiple, RM, was not favorable to this type of activity. In other words, it's not in the ordinance to be able to do it. So in essence, you can't do it. So in order to make that dream come true, and I think that the board probably would agree to that too, that I did anyways, that it's well suited for a sports facility. It's right next to the high school, literally attaches the high school property. It's an asset to the schools as well as the rest of the community. It'd be baseball, soccer, futsal. There's a lot of things that could be done there. So anyways, it was presented to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission then determined a site-specific relief to be a sports complex. So the Planning Commission basically gave it its blessing, and it's been passed up to the board to make the final decision as to whether we would agree to do so. So, are there any questions anybody has on this? On the board? All right. Any questions in the audience? Anybody have any questions about force facilities?
Mr. Hamel, may I address the board and
Yes.
the audience briefly? The Planning Commission made a recommendation that the board makes a decision. It does not have to follow the Planning Commission recommendation. Tonight is an actual hearing at which you are to consider whatever the applicant wants to submit. They can simply rely on their written submissions, which was a site-specific relief statement that addressed the factors in the ordinance. They turned in a concept development plan under the ordinance. They met with township planning staff, and a statement of agreed upon facts was reached that is intended to narrow the issues. And after you hear from them, you are to allow anyone else here that wants to offer evidence, if you will, an opportunity to do that. Eventually, the township board is then called upon to make a decision. You may make that decision this evening. You may postpone. You have all sorts of options here to provide guidance on that front. I have provided the board with a draft, and I emphasize the word draft, of a possible motion if you were inclined to go with the Planning Commission's recommendation. That draft does have language that attempts to touch upon the 4 areas where the Planning Commission suggested conditions that the board consider. And in making your decision, you may impose conditions along with that. I have provided a copy of that to Mr. Toponi as well, indicating that that's something the board may or may not do, and that he was the second person to see that draft. You, now they have it, are the, oh, that'd be the 3rd through 10th. So that's the context. So hear from the applicant. They can rely on what they've turned in. They can provide additional evidence if they wish. Hear from anyone from the public, and then the board makes deliberates and makes a decision.
Okay, I guess we could have this discussion on this. Which means we should be looking at items 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you choose to make conditions at this point. My personal opinion on item number 1, I think we should leave the hours alone until there's a subsequent site plan.
If I may,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's premature to talk about those draft conditions. I think the first thing is you want to have the applicant make their record, hear from the public, then take up the document in front of you.
Okay.
If you are working that.
So, Mr. Dipalma, would you like to pitch your case?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the Township Board for the time. We've made a presentation, and we've been in this discussion for a while with the Planning Department and members of the Township Board. I think we've submitted in writing all of the relevant documents, and I think at this point we'd like to rely on those documents. These 4 points came up in discussion as possible items for discussion that the Planning Commission raised, and we're happy to discuss them at this time or at a later date with the in-house officials of the Planning Department, whatever you will be.
That works.
All right, so now we can move ahead. So let's have that discussion on the.
So now you would ask if anyone from the public wants to talk.
Okay, it's a public meeting. This is a whole new deal for me here on this one. Anybody from public have a comment?
I just had a question. What's the size of the property that they're putting this on?
22.77 acres.
Name and address, please.
James Brand, 2466 Amelia.
All right, any other comments or questions?
I just had a question. Could you state the 4 points that the Planning Commission had regarding this property? The
Sure.
4 points that we're talking about?
The Planning Commission wanted the Township Board to consider conditions dealing with the hours of outdoor activities, the subject of outdoor lighting, the use of any public address system, and screening or buffering along the north property line that adjoins residential homes. What I provided to you touches those 4 areas with a little more specifics. And again, it's just my effort to give you something as a starting working point. You don't have to impose any conditions. If you wanted to, you have a document that numbers 1 through 4 corresponds to what the Planning Commission wanted you to consider.
Okay, so no more public comment? Do we need to run it like a normal public meeting, close the public section and then,
You have not, yeah, you would close the evidence.
okay?
If it's of any benefit, I can summarize what I've given to you, so the public knows what you're considering.
Okay, so, Mr. Dipalma?
Yeah, I'd like to run through these four items, and give you my perspective on what I heard at the planning commission. I think you were there, and, Mr. Smith was there, and the attorney was there, so if I misstate something, please correct me. Item number one is the hours of operation. We were discussing hours of operation outdoors. And basically, since we have no outdoor lighting, we're not gonna be playing baseball or soccer after dark. And I don't see kids getting up at, 7 o'clock in the morning, but I do for tournaments, see them getting there at 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning. But generally, it's going, outside operations are gonna go with daylight hours. We are gonna have indoor facilities, and those facilities will be running after dark. But there won't be any noise. Whatever is happening is gonna be inside the facility, whether it be batting cages or volleyball courts or whatever we wind up putting up. So that's how I see the hours of operation, and my interpretation of what the planning commission was trying to get to. Item number two, outdoor lighting. We're not planning on having outdoor lighting, but we are gonna probably need some lighting here for the parking lot at some point in time as the facility grows. And I would assume that when you're referring to outside lighting, you're not referring to parking lot lighting or lighting from the building to illuminate the areas for people to walk to get into the facilities. Again, that's my interpretation. Public address system, we're not gonna be public addressing every event or every game, but as we said during the planning commission meeting, a lot of the events we're hoping are going to be national events where we bring teams from different parts of the country and different parts of the state. And a lot of them are gonna be young kids, and they love to hear their name announced, okay? It's basically gonna be calling a soccer game or calling a baseball game or a championship tournament, that type of thing. But our impact is gonna be significantly less than what, the neighbors said that they heard from the high school. Significantly less. But we are gonna need some of those kinds of things in order to accommodate the needs of our customers. The north property line, I agreed to keep 100 foot clear. There's gotta be some way of screening some of those homes, and my feeling was that we kept everything 100 feet away from there. The neighbors seem to be happy with it. I like to keep it natural vegetation. Just let it grow naturally the way it is now. Now, if we're talking about landscaping that area, and, I'm gonna be building berms and fences and everything else, then I wanna use the property. I think that makes logical sense to everybody here. Those are the 4 points.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, we'll close the public session. And that's at 6:54. And now we'll open the discussion session for the board. You heard Mr. Deponio's conversation. Anybody have anything they would like to address on that or add to it, or?
Not so much on that, but I would like the board to talk about the requirements for a site-specific relief. This is the first time we've ever been asked to do that. It's kind of an unusual tool to use, and I'm having a problem with some of the requirements. A says applicant's property cannot be reasonably used for the purposes permitted in the zoning district, and that's not true. It can be reasonably used for RM. It can't be maybe as much as he wants, but it can be, and he has the choice to rezone it also. That 5-acre parcel, you know, out of 20, he's got 22, 5 is not a huge impact on that to be able to do what he wants to do on that property. So I don't agree with that being a reason to grant site-specific relief. And I wonder if the board read through these and if they have any other comments about it. You know, it's what is the unique circumstances to this property that requires this?
Mr. Deponio,
Do you want me to address that? Okay. In order to effectively develop, economically develop multiple property, the regulations in Oakland County and the state of Michigan basically have changed over the last several years. If the township develops a disposal facility on that site, the isolation distance from that site for wells could be anywhere from 800 to 2,000 feet, depending on how the sanitarian or the state looks at the development at the time. So if the township were to develop that, without water there, we can't develop any kind of multiple. We may not even be able to put new wells in because of the isolation distance that's impacted by the community disposal system. We're talking about the 5 acres that's encumbered. Okay. You can do anything. We could put a single-family home on there, but is it economically feasible? Is it a smart thing for the community to do? Is it a good thing for the community? I don't think so. I think this kind of development that brings people from outside the area to the community, this kind of development that is for the youth of this community, so that they don't have to drive to Brighton or Fenton or South Lyon to have their kids involved in high-level athletic activity. I think having it closer to home is a benefit to all of them. I think having a facility here that brings people here and having a facility here that gives the schools an opportunity to use part of it helps the schools who are suffering with not enough enrollees in this area.
I have no argument with that. I agree with you. It'd be a great facility. My problem is using this tool to make it happen. You know, you can rezone this property and do exactly the same thing without putting in place something that it sets a precedence for other property in the township. And that's my issue with doing it this way with the site-specific relief that we're looking at.
I think you've done this before.
No, we have not ever done this.
If I may, I'm understanding that you use this in the La Fontaine property. That's what this Corwin advised.
Which property?
the old bowling alley.
It was used one other time. I was not involved in that, but I've seen the documents from that. Site-specific relief. Mr. Hamel may have the details on the property. I don't, but it was used one other time.
Well, my point is, it sets a precedence for other, when you have an option and a path to take that accomplishes something without getting into these unusual approvals, you should take it. And there's no reason why you shouldn't rezone this property instead of going through the site-specific relief.
Well,
I think the facility will be a great addition to the township. I'm really pleased that you're doing that, but my issue is with going this route with it.
Okay, I'm going to give a counter to that. The counter is that the township rezoned this to a zoning, and just because the documents don't say you can do it, it puts restrictions on what people can use the property for. But the other part of it is, if Mr. Dipalma were to rezone this so that he could do this, and at a later date wanted to come back to RM, the township has proven before that they may change their mind and not want to allow that to happen. So there is no, and the offerings were that, okay, Mr. Dipalma, why don't you just make it C2 or do this, make it another one that this would fit in. Well, if you made it C2, you open the door for a Target or any of these other
But
buildings
this,
in
you
there.
know, that's if.
No,
We're
that's
talking
not an
about
if, that's a fact.
rezoning, and the fact that you can do this with a rezoning, and that's the normal, proper procedure. in
Yeah,
my
and our planning commission was put to the task to look at it, and they very strongly agreed that this was a good application for site-specific relief.
What was the vote on the planning commission?
I believe it was unanimous.
It was, I'm on the planning commission, and there was a long discussion about this, Mary, and that was the final decision that they went
It
with.
was a unanimous vote?
Yes, it
I
was.
think the relief is, you know, is looked at very carefully for specific things. I think, unless I'm wrong, we can choose to approve it or not approve it. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay,
That's
so
correct. It's only a
doing it for this
recommendation.
one does not set precedent for everybody. Is that correct? Would that be correct?
No,
No?
I don't
You
think
mean
so.
because we do this, anybody that wants something, we have to do?
we don't have to, but
Well,
they can ask. That's
They
what
can
I'm
ask,
saying.
and our decision is to look at each one, if we get to that point.
All right, any other comments? I'd like to go down and follow through with one of Mr. Deponio's statements. I think that using the term daylight hours for outdoor activities is probably more acceptable than trying to delineate by the hour of the day, because you know how time changes over the seasons. So the midsummer, they'll be out playing late, and late fall will be through early. So that really restricts the activity on those fields. So item 2, I believe that what Mr. Deponio said about not doing the lighting is probably a correct way to look at it. I know that we're probably not looking to light up the entire area day and night. I know the neighbors were not very favorable towards that were at the meeting. I think that parking lot lights and building lights, which are required to be down, you know, casting, would not have any negative effects. And I think that it should be approved without facility outdoor lighting, in other words, for fields or field lighting.
Mr. Campbell, just on that point, the condition suggests that no additional outdoor lighting unless it's approved by a subsequent site plan or township board approval. If there's a proposal to make parking lot improvements such as lighting, at a minimum, that's going to be an administrative site plan approval.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I drafted it that way.
Yeah, no, I agree with what's written there. I'm just saying that the indication is, though, it's not going to be lit for use on the fields. Any use of outdoor public address system, I think, I agree with number 3 wholly. I don't see where it's going to be a problem with, I think that you should have stuff for special events. I think that the public is acceptable to that, and I think the neighbors are acceptable to that too. Number 4, having been in the landscape business for a lot of years, 100 feet's a big distance. And I don't know that 100 feet is something that necessarily should be required. It might be better termed as, I think something Mr. Deponio said that caught me on that one was, if we require them to put a berm in, then there shouldn't be a requirement to do a 100-foot wide berm. I don't know if a lot of people understand how far 100 foot is. It's significant. And it takes up a significant amount of land that could be used for the activities.
Is the natural land there now fairly dense?
Yeah, there's quite a bit of stuff growing up in there, and I do agree with the natural landscape and just leave it alone.
That would make more sense than
Yeah.
putting money into landscape and tearing out everything we got.
If I may on that one, it says keep the north 100 feet open space, no recreational fields or courts. The second part, I'm not clear if that's acceptable to the applicant or not, and shall comply with any landscaping requirements of a subsequent site plan approval for the property. The site plan approval that the Township Planning Commission gave was for the first ball field. It's a baseball field. It was contemplated that any field development out there beyond that would be coming back for some level of site plan approval. And I don't think anyone at the planning commission tried to make a decision as to whether, when that came through, if they want any landscaping out there. So the second part of that can be eliminated. What I heard Mr. Toponi agree to at the planning commission, and I think he's reiterated here this evening, is the first part is fine. North 100 feet, maintain as open space, not developed for outdoor recreational fields or courts. If the second part, you know, there's two conditions buried in number 4. Just point out that, again, this is a working document for you folks.
So Ben, do you have a and/or in your mind?
Well, what I'm saying is that, you know, I offered 100-foot buffer. And my intention was to keep it natural. Now, if the planning department is going to mandate landscaping and berms or whatever, there's no need for that 100-foot buffer. So, you know, I think at some point in time, common sense has to play into the equation here.
So Gary, you feel comfortable that this statement covers that for him, or that
What if we
should-
change the and to an or? Instead of saying you must comply with both, you can say you either have 100 feet or you comply with landscaping requirements. So if he goes in the direction of adding landscaping, he can opt out of the 100 feet at that point.
I'm okay with that.
Are you good with that?
Sounds good to me.
I like that.
Okay, any other comments or statements?
How often do you plan to have events there where you might be having a public address system?
You know, we're kind of in the preliminary workings here. I really don't know.
Right.
But I mean, normally in tournaments, I'm gonna start with baseball because that's what we're accustomed to. Normally during championship games and tournaments that are there on weekends, the championship games usually fall on a Sunday. And during those games, you know, there would be some kind of an announcement. I don't think it's gonna be anything as loud as with the high school because I can hear them at Highland Plaza. It would be a portable unit that just those kids would hear. And I can't imagine at the beginning, you know, many more than 5 or 6 events during the summer for baseball, weekend events. But, you know, we're gonna have outdoor soccer fields. And, you know, we're gonna come up with the same thing there. You know, we're not, generally, the only time you have an announcement is for the championship game. So if we have a weekend where we have, you know, a bunch of teams playing, the championship game for an hour and a half is gonna have, you're gonna hear people's names and people's numbers and that kind of thing, but it's not a constant noise. And the neighbors
More
that
control
attend the
than
meeting.
for the immediate environment.
Immediate
stadium.
environment, yeah, we're not broadcasting it to the.
You're not gonna do
the
it all
house.
day long.
Yeah, and homeowners that attended the meeting, you know, were more than comfortable with that because they, you know, they said to the point where they know every player who plays on the football team at Milford High School by name. So, you know, they were comfortable with what we were proposing.
Okay.
They also have the Milford Equestrian group that does their stuff there, and their events
On Saturdays now.
are on Saturdays, and they use a PA system, and they said that didn't bother them either, so.
Right. I don't anticipate anything nearly as intrusive as anything that goes on at the high school, as far as noise goes.
So, Mr. Toponi, this drawing we're looking at shows 1 baseball field and 4 soccer fields, is that what's planned for
Yeah,
that?
it's a vision right now, okay? We may wind up, as I said at the meeting, you know, we're just starting negotiations with a lot of people regarding this project. This was a vision and a layout as we see it today. But we were gonna let the market kind of dictate where we go. We might wind up with 2 baseball fields and 2 soccer fields. Soccer fields are interchangeable with football fields and lacrosse fields. You know, we're gonna let the market kind of dictate what it needs.
Okay.
And that we're gonna be determining here over the next 4, 5, 6 months.
So when will that be addressed, like at the planning commission site plan, or?
We're required to come back to the planning department with plans on what we wanna do.
Okay, so you'll
And,
know by then, you'll know by then.
We'll have some idea by then, yes.
When do you expect these buildings to be built for the sports facility and the other sports building?
Again, the marketplace is gonna dictate how fast this happens, okay? We have uses, immediate uses for the existing building and the addition to the existing building for baseball and the baseball field. Those we have commitments for, and we have uses for those right now. We're gonna start discussions with the various soccer groups in this area. We've had some preliminary discussions, but as I told the planning commission, until we have an approval and until we're able to move forward, that we are here and we exist is not any longer, we may be here, until this board determines if we are in existence. At that point, I can start having serious discussions and things will fall into place. I'm anticipating that next year we will be mass grading at least half of the site, and we will be preparing some soccer fields in addition to the baseball field. There may be a need for all of it next summer. It will depend on what the marketplace determines. What the needs of the area are, what the needs of the schools are, because we are going to be trying to partner with the schools here, because I'm sure that they have needs for these facilities.
All right, any other questions?
I had a question for Mary Pat, I guess, when you were at the meeting, the planning commission meeting, and you felt, as long as you had a long discussion, but when it was done, that the board felt satisfied?
They did,
Okay,
did they recommend the, approval?
okay, thank you.
Yes?
Just point blank question for Mr. Toponi, is the language of condition 3 as presented acceptable to you on the public address system?
I'm not an attorney.
Why?
You are.
Well,
And I would hope that the language drafted kind of contemplates some light usage for,
well, it says for special events,
Mhm.
give advance notice to the township and the people that live up along the north, and don't point or direct the speakers to the north.
I have no problem with not pointing the speaker to the north. We can drop off flyers, but I don't want to be tied to having to make sure that I contact somebody and have a discussion with them
No.
every time I want to.
It intentionally doesn't indicate the form of the notice. But just so that somebody here at the township, knows that there's gonna be use of the public address system, complaint comes in, township says, well, they did what they were supposed to do, they let us know.
We're okay with that.
All right. So in that case, we'll entertain a motion. Would you
Want me to read this into the record for you?
please?
Is someone inclined to make a motion to approve this?
I would make the motion.
I'll support it.
You would probably say that regarding case number URSA 1703, which requests site-specific relief under Article 18 of the zoning ordinance for a sports complex on the 22.77 acre parcel of property located at 201 Lone Tree that is signed tax parcel 1134-101-020, having reviewed and considered the application, site-specific relief statement, and proposed concept development plan submitted by the applicant, 201 Lone Tree LLC, the statement of agreed upon facts, the Planning Commission's September 7, 2017 recommendation, The evidence presented or referred to at the Township Board's hearing on September 13, 2017, and the factors to be considered under Section 1802 of the Ordinance. I move to grant site-specific relief for the sports complex as requested, which shall be limited to the intended uses disclosed by the applicant in its written submittals and concept development plan, subject to the following conditions. 1. Hours of outdoor sports activities shall be limited to daylight or such other hours as may be approved by a subsequent site plan or Township Board approval. 2, there shall be no additional outdoor lighting unless it is approved by a subsequent site plan or Township Board approval. 3, any use of an outdoor public address system shall be limited to special events, advance notice of which has been provided to the Township Planning Department and the occupants of residential properties to the north, with speakers for any public address system to not be directed or pointed to the north. 4, the north 100 feet of the property shall be maintained as open space and not be developed for outdoor recreational fields or courts, or shall comply with any landscaping requirements of a subsequent site plan approval for the property. That this approval is not final until a development agreement has been signed and recorded does not prevent the issuance of township permits necessary for the building renovations disclosed in the application. That's what you said.
I like it, that's exactly what it said.
Repeat that. Thank you, Joe, that was a very good job. All right,
Support?
I think Brian supported it.
Okay.
So it's moved and supported. May I have a vote, please?
I vote yes.
Yes,
I still think this should go the other route because the planning commission recommended 100%. I will vote yes on it.
Yes.
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 Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. DePonio.
Thank
Both
you.
of the
Thank
Mr. DePonios
thank you.
Thank
have
you.
been done. All right,
Congratulations, guys. Looking forward to see it develop.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Full speed ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the next item. 8B, grant match for Mdot pathway. This was kind of I attended an Mdot meeting about the M59 in 2018, actually when I was at the meeting early this spring. Actually, February, somewhere in there. They had put together what they call the shovel-ready plan to rebuild M59 from about where the turnaround is for John Street all the way to the western border of the township. And at that time, they didn't know whether they were going to actually have the resources. The government had monies that they were putting out there for funding. And because they've had shovel-ready, we were allocated, the Mdot was allocated the money to do so. So in 2018, M59 is going to be a mess because they're literally going to tear out the old 1936 roadbed on the south side and replace that completely. And then they'll resurface the north side and do some other changes. Well, at that meeting, one of the things I asked them was that we had some areas where there were pathways that the township in the previous time period had allocated resources to through a grant to pave the pathways that are there right now, a 10-foot wide path that's on the north side. There were some major sections missing. There's a section that is at the west edge of the Timber Ridge subdivision. And it goes to the entrance of the Cobblestone subdivision. Then there's a missing piece that picks up after that and goes all the way to Hickory Ridge Road. The Mdot had drawn that in as a part of their project. Then I asked them the question, well, you've put that in there, what can we do to get it to the end of the township? So what they did is they put together a plan, and part of the problem was, the reason they didn't pre-plan that one was that there's quite a large wetland that is right between the two car dealerships, between LaFontaine's and J And as a general rule, they would run that pathway through the the marshland, and the expense of the bridge that would be built was huge. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to do so. So I talked with the engineers. The engineers said that they could pull the sidewalk closer to M59 with some protective equipment of some sort, screening of some sort, and be able to do that pathway without going through that swamp, which would save a huge amount of money. So in the same conversation, I said, well, is there any way we can get help with this? And one of the engineers gave my name and number to Mdot's grant individual, and Mdot actually wrote the grant for us. As in every Mdot grant, there's a match that's required, and their request was $100,000. It's a $375,000 project, and we would commit 29.85% of that, or $100,000, and if we do that, then the probability of receiving the grant is pretty much a go. If we don't match, then of course they're gonna give consideration to other communities that might be matching on other projects. So that pathway is a part of our pathway plan that was developed a number of years ago. In all the surveys that we've done, pathways and non-motorized paths are top priority that people would like to see. So I would like to, and if you look at your drawings, they're pretty hard to see because they squeezed them all in. Huh? 3 sections, yeah. So you get the whole repair part of 59, but you'll also see the pathways that we're talking about that are going to be put in there.
So what's in yellow and what's in red there?
Yellow is the new stuff that'll be put in.
Okay, the red line?
Red's existing.
The red
Is there
existing.
money?
Okay.
Well, red is that red is actually the right-of-way line, but the path goes all the way to the library from Timber Ridge. If you look closely, you can see it in there the whole way to the library.
Actually goes beyond Timber Ridge a little bit to that yellow line right there,
Yeah.
our sub up there. It's a nice path too.
Okay, and Rick, I was just, we should make it public knowledge then, ask Judy about the funds.
Yes. In order to come up with that $100,000, there actually was, and Judy, if you want to take that, I'll let you
Sure.
go ahead.
As of the last audit, at December 31st in 2016, in the general fund, we had an unassigned fund balance of $1,157,201. And in capital improvements, with that fund is, the total reason for that fund is for projects such as this, so like major projects. The fund balance in that account was $2,247,055, and of that, $637,000 is assigned, so we can't use that portion, but the rest is available for those capital improvement projects.
So the intention is to take that money out of capital improvement?
Correct.
That would be my,
Recommendation.
But it wouldn't be until next year. It wouldn't be out of this year's budget.
No. Well, no, I don't believe so. I mean, by the time this probably goes through,
if they're like the road commission, they take forever to build. Just saying.
well, we should be prepared. We do have enough money to be prepared for a budget amendment if it's
If
necessary.
the invoice came through, we could, make a budget.
Well, I think it's important to designate if we approve this tonight, to say where that money's coming from. And
Absolutely.
then at audit time, the auditor should know 100,000 of that is
Yep,
Right.
spoken for.
yep.
You know.
So we did allocate up to $150,000 for engineering for the safe routes to schools. And that's gonna happen next year as well. And this is really an interesting thing, how we've been able to get so much more pathway in 2 MDOT sponsored projects. So I think it's it's an asset to the community to have that pathway, instead of having to ride on the edge of 159 or in the road, which some people run and walk and do that, all that in there. This will be a good avenue to kind of tie the community together. Next step is to figure out how to get it to East Island.
And then to Milford.
You mean South Highland?
Yeah, South Highland.
So,
Milford Road.
so I would like to make the motion that we allocate $100,000 from capital improvement for a match for the Mdot TAP grant for the M59 pathway extension.
Support.
Okay,
If you were
moved and
done, I'm
supported.
sorry. Support.
Vote please.
Mr. Sylvia?
Yes?
Yes.
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 Awesome.
Motion carries.
Very cool.
We also need to approve that resolution, I'm assuming?
Yes, there's a resolution that goes with that, so. Okay, the next item is resolution number 17-15 to support for TAP grant for construction of a non-motorized pathway on M59 from Hickory Ridge Road to Tipsy-Hill Lake Road.
Mr. Supervisor,
Yes,
the second to last whereas, how does that read?
that should be Highland Township.
Some
Highland
township.
Township
Authorizes,
authorizes some,
this was boilerplate that got sent to us by MDOT.
well,
I didn't
some
catch
is a bad word there.
So,
It should be Highland.
I mean, it authorizes the township supervisor, is that the
that
intent?
should be what it,
Yes.
thank you, Gary, that's why we're paying
So
you to
how
be
should
here.
it read? I'm sorry, Highland Township authorizes township, thank you. You, my friend?
Some gets changed to the
Okay.
supervisor goes in after township.
We have a copy of this that you can have.
Is it ready for motion?
Yes.
I would move to move resolution 1715 with the correction. Second from the bottom paragraph.
Support?
Okay, moved and supported.
Mrs.
Vote please.
Mrs. McDonald?
Yes.
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 Motion carries.
Thank you, board. 8D, a resolution 17-11 to authorize the placement of signage for the Highland Fall Festival.
Missed
Wait,
the
skip C.
architectural barriers.
I checked it, that's why. Okay. Sorry about that. Item C, 8C. We put out for bid to remove architectural barriers at the activity center using CDBG money. And this was actually a project that was started in 2016 in terms of request for use of the funds for CDBG. And we received, we should probably change that to 2017 because it's happening now. You have a copy of it, it's a memorandum, but.
Are we
Well,
using
the
two
project
thousand
was from
sixteen
16 now, yeah.
CDBG
Okay.
money?
Yeah, they're backwards in there.
Right.
Okay. So anyways, we received, we put it out for bids. There's there was the advertisement, copy of the affidavit from Pontiac, or the Oakland Press, and then the bid requirements. And once again, we received only one bid, and it was from Envision Construction Services for $33,200. We worked with them on the previous projects where we installed the electric door here and made it ADA approved, and also did work on the front door to the building department to make that actuator. And they did a phenomenal job. I don't know if you remember the old door that used to be in there that looked like it was off a, it belonged to Grandma's house, but now we have something that is a lot more fitting. So I'd like to recommend that, make the motion of a contract with Envision Construction Services for $33,200 to remove architectural barriers at the activity center. $30,232 will be reimbursed with 2016 CDBG funds, and the remaining $2,968 will be paid from the general fund activity center built under building maintenance.
Support?
Okay, moved and supported. Vote, please.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
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 Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
Motion carries.
You guys ready to go, you can go. And you're itching to go, so. Won't take it personal.
Okay, item D, now we get the resolution for signage. For the October Festival, this is pretty much standard process for festivals. There's a request to place two-sided 3-foot by 6-foot wide core-class signs within the center median on the south side of M59, and be secured with metal fence posts, include the festival name, date, HVCA's website. Sign locations are marked on an attached map, which you would find in there, and they'll be in place September 22nd through October 7th, 2017.
I would move to approve resolution number 1711 to authorize the placement of signage on the M59 median for the Highland Fall Festival.
Support.
Moved and supported. Vote, please.
Mrs. Chenoweth?
Yes.
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 yes,
Yes.
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 Motion carries.
Okay, next item. Everybody got it? Sitting down? Okay. This is resolution 17-12 to establish mill rates for the 2018 budget. The resolution, these are the proposed millage rates for 2018 are as follows. 0.6000 for the general operating fund millage. That's what your township board and this building operates on. For the fire fund millage, it's 1.4139. For the police fund millage, it's 3.4733. For the library, it's 1.2457. And for the library debt fund, it's 0.5400. Anybody have any questions on that?
And just to clarify, these are, the millages are totaled up, so we have two separate police millages. This is the total of both of them, correct? And same with library.
And there's 4 library, yeah.
Yeah.
And that this is not an increase from
No,
last year.
it's not an
So,
increase
just
at all.
so everyone knows that.
They've all been rolled back because of Headley.
So for public knowledge, I'd like to put out there that 0.600 for general operating fund millage is around $400,000. So that's just a small portion of what our operating budget is for the general operating. The fire fund millage is about $150 plus or minus. That's what you pay for trash on an annual basis. So it seems like
For average household. you're
for the average household. So I think that that's one of the things that needs to be very clear is that I think our trash pickup is worth a lot less than our fire protection. So that just gives you an idea how efficient and effective the fire chief has been, and he's trying to stay within budget.
Very hard.
And it's very hard, very hard. The police fund millage, I think our sheriffs have done a phenomenal job. I don't know how Matt does it, but he always stays in budget, so. Do a great job, and I really appreciate what you've done, so I want to keep you around. It's a comment comes up on a regular basis at our township supervisor meetings that we have once a month. There's 15 supervisors that get together, and the comment is always who uses the sheriffs and who has their own police. And the people that the groups that use their sheriff can never speak more highly of it. And one of the values is that really strikes me is that I'll use Milford as a comparison. Milford and White Lake both have their own police force. If at one point Milford had 2 officers out or down, They still had to pay for those officers, but they had no replacements. We're never down with the sheriff. We're never behind on the technology. We're always there with the technology. And the other part is that you need additional help. It's always there. And so it's really probably the best system and something I think everybody in the county should consider because of the value added. And yes, Chief?
Plus the added benefit of the positive determination for fires, for arson. We use Oakland County Sheriff a lot, search and rescue inside Highland Recreation area. We have the ability for quads, stuff like that, through that, the Oakland County Sheriff's water rescues, just the resources that we rely on from the fire department, we get from the sheriffs, and it's greatly appreciated.
And then our library, I can't speak any more highly of it. It's a cool place to be. I'm glad that the people that chose to commit to the millage to build it did so. That millage will be, one of them will be retiring soon. We hope that everybody will go out and recognize the value of the library going forward and be assured that we keep them well funded. And that's my comment on that. So,
Motion?
motion?
I would move to approve the resolution 17-12 to establish millage rates for the 2018 budget as presented.
Support.
Moved and supported. Vote, please.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
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 Motion carries.
Okay, this one, I'm gonna throw this one at our attorney. This item is Resolution 17-13, designation of agencies to administer and enforce applicable provisions of the state housing law.
So, as I indicated in my letter to the board, I don't know why, but like 99 years after public that was adopted in 1917, called the Housing Law of Michigan, the legislature made part of it automatically applicable to townships. Based on our population being more than 10,000, the part that's automatically applicable are the minimum maintenance standards for multiple dwellings. As far as 1 and 2 family dwellings, it's your option, and I'm not recommending doing that. So, with the legislature saying this is automatically applicable here, it triggers a requirement for the township board to designate what township agencies are going to administer and enforce the multiple housing minimum maintenance standards. And I voted for the building and fire departments, and that's reflected in your resolution. I think they're the logical ones to do it. If you were to look at the minimum maintenance standards from the housing law of 1917, you would quickly realize that they were housing standards that by and large were applicable in 1917. We now have property maintenance codes and other ways that we regulate housing. So I'm not sure how often anything will come up under this. This is basically house cleaning. When I saw that this had happened and saw what that required, I put this together and have presented it to you. Suggest that you adopt the resolution as presented.
Okay, somebody like to make a motion?
I would move to approve resolution number 1713, designation of agencies to administer and enforce applicable provisions of the state housing law.
Support.
Moved and supported. Vote, please.
I vote yes.
yes,
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Mary.
Yes.
Yes.
Race.
Yes.
My turn now, yes.
Everybody's voting yes, right?
Sorry.
Motion
I
carried.
apologize.
He's anxious.
Brian really liked that one.
I did. Let's move on.
Okay, yeah, next item, Resolution 17-14, Mdot Performance Resolution for Government Agencies.
So this is our annual permit.
This is our standard thing that we have to have a resolution for. to give, for us to give individual permits to use the state highway right-of-way. So this is what we have to have, record of given to Mdot, so that they know that we've been given permission to allow people to put signs if we give them permission. So that's,
And we can plant in the medians.
and we can plant in the median and do things like that, so. Can I get a motion to
I'll
approve this
move to
resolution?
approve resolution 17-14, MDOT performance resolution for governmental agencies.
Support?
Moved and supported, vote please.
Mr. Salvia?
Yes.
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 Motion carries.
All right, the next item is a request to, for an application for enhanced mobility of seniors and individuals with disabilities. It's a grant renewal. This is from our bus program, and this is a continuation of the grant program that we have to date. But if you see in the amount, there hasn't been a number that we've been given that Mdot and the SMART is given how much is going to be available. There's $1 million available total, and what they'll do is they'll make a determination as to how they want to divide it up and what communities they want to give it to. So it's pretty important that we get our grant application in, and Viner did a great job in the last one, and she's rocking and ready to roll on this one, so we'll know better after she gets the application in as to what the final amount will be. But there is a match. It's the same match that was required before. There's a 50-50 match. Our match is our current funds less 5310 funds. So it's kind of an odd way to approach it, but it worked on the last one, and I'm not a bookkeeper, so don't know what to tell you on that one. But
So we don't have a dollar amount for what our match is,
No.
or?
we don't have a dollar amount on the total piece yet, so,
So we can't figure out what the match is.
right.
And what,
This is an approval to go after the grant is what she's
Right.
asking,
the
so.
funds, the match comes from? Does
Pardon
that
me?
come from the transportation funds?
Yeah.
Just so that the audience is aware of that where the funds are coming from for the match.
Right.
It's in the budget.
And if the board approves turning in the application and it's successful, you'll get a grant agreement back that will need to be approved.
Anyways,
It'll have
yeah,
details, so I guess at that point, you can figure out if you're happy with the
right.
match and your ability to satisfy it.
Well, this was literally, this was our board's, actually thanks to Mary Pat, I believe. This document was something the school does, is that if you're gonna go after a grant, ask first before you go, and that's what this is. This is to ask first. And they're asking the board to allow them to go after a grant, and then after we find out what they received, then we have the right for approval. So it's not an approval of the grant, it's approval of the right to be able to go after the grant, so. Anybody want to make a motion?
I would move to approve the grant application for FTA Section 5310, Enhanced Mobility of Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities.
Support.
Moved and supported. Vote please.
Mrs. McDonald?
Yes.
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 Motion carries.
Okay, the next item, I, discussion regarding ordinance officer position. The first thing we need to do is let everybody know that William Messenger, commonly known to us as Bill, has been with us for 22 years, and he's decided effective Friday, the 13th of October, that he's going to retire. So we have to fill some big boots. Bill's done an awesome job. He's performed way above and beyond the call of duty. When I first got into office, you know, you have to kind of learn what each one of those people sitting behind that computer is doing. And one of the things that I saw with Bill was that if there was a call that came in and said there's an issue, Bill was out there that day, or at least that afternoon, and then had everything written up in the computer as he should have. Everything's there. I mean, all the documentation is there. He's just done a stellar job. He's the kind of person that you want to use as a model for what we should have to replace him. So, with the opening of the position, it kind of created an opportunity to rethink the position. And our fire chief came up with what I thought was a stellar idea. We need a fire marshal, and we don't have a fire marshal, and that fire marshal performs a lot of duties. For instance, plan review in terms of some of the structures. If you're starting to get larger structures, that you need a fire marshal to be able to review the plans to see if they meet the fire code. Inspections on commercial buildings, inspections on new structures. There's just a plethora of things that the fire marshal adds value to. The interesting part about it is when you think about it, the fire marshal has to know all of the fire codes or how to interpret them. We have our ordinances, which are essentially the same type of thing for our building codes. It's a little stretch for a fire marshal to be able to move into that ordinance position and cover both. So what the fire marshal had proposed was, let's hire a ordinance officer, AKA, or also known as fire marshal ordinance enforcement, full-time. The individual would reside in the township office, in Bill's Messenger's blessed chair, and he would serve the community in two modes at the same time. He would also be a firefighter. Now, the intent is that he doesn't get up and run at the call at every call, but there would be times when he would be required to serve in a fire and so on and so forth. So I thought it was a great idea. I agreed with the chief 100%, so we decided to pull the, we did put on the sign out there, the digital sign. We've had several applicants already for an enforcement officer's position. One, I think, is a retired fire person, so there's some potential there. But we pulled the ads before they went out, and we wanted to discuss this with the board to see how the board felt about doing that. Because it would become a full-time position, there would be the health care and other items that are attached to it. And the intent was to share that cost with the fire department. So we'd be splitting the cost between two budgets. And I think it's a smart thing to do. Chief, would you like to?
I'd like to add a couple things to that. First off, according to FEMA, 40% of businesses that succumb to a disaster never reopen. According to the Small Business Association of America, 90% of businesses that succumb to a disaster like this fail within 2 years. We've been pretty fortunate with the large commercial structures we've had in town that have caught fire. Highland Feed, Calasantes, both have reopened. Napa, while it's open again, it's not the same owners. So we're kind of above the curve. Another thing I'd like to add to it is also the points that we get from ISO. You'll hear me talking again and again and again about ISO. ISO is a subsidiary of Verisk Analytics. It stands for Insurance Service Offices. Their job is to evaluate communities' fire protection, and it's based off of CPC, Community Protection Classification. We recently decreased our CPC from 6.8 to a 4.4Y. It's been in the paper. We're promoting it as much as possible. It should save a considerable amount of money in insurance fees for our residents. Inspection is a component of how they evaluate our fire department. If we can stop fires from happening in town, it makes us look a ton better, and it also protects our citizens as well as my staff. So that's all I want to say. I can ramble on for a while, but
All right,
I
yes.
have a question. So as far as training though, this person, what are our chances, except you said somebody did apply now, that they know how, the thing about firemen, to be a fire marshal, and know about ordinances? I mean, what are the chances that you find a person that have all those qualifications to do two separate jobs?
many of the ordinances that are enforced currently also fall underneath the fire code. Address identification, clearance around buildings, driveway assessment, stuff like that. A lot of that falls hand in hand with the fire code.
Okay.
So it'd be an easy transition for a experienced fire marshal or fire inspector from somewhere.
The, one of the
Thank you.
elements that we had put in the original request was that some type of public safety background was preferred. And the rationale behind that, and now Mr. Messenger was a retired police officer, is that they've had training in how to deal with adverse situations, and quite extensively in most cases. So there's a natural propensity to be able to handle situations where things get a little testy or maybe people aren't quite happy with. So that falls hand in hand with a fire officer, you know. That same kind of training is expected of firemen. I mean, they're coming to scenes where they have to deal with people that are completely out of control, and understanding how to be compassionate and work with that. So, and then understanding our codes is just a learning curve. I mean, everybody's got something that's a little bit different, but in essence, the way it works is somebody calls, you look in the ordinance, is there something that falls into that, and then you act upon it in what's appropriate according to the interpretation of the code. So there are people out there that have been in the building industry, you probably understand some of that stuff. It's not just building, a lot of it's behavior based. You got noise ordinances, so it's pretty much, it's written in black and white in our ordinance book, it's policy. You just have to be somebody that understands how to read code and policy. And I think that's an asset, so yes.
If the board were to approve the concept, would the next step be to prepare a job description
Yes.
and job qualifications?
Yes,
And then, at that point, then you would advertise for the position.
right.
I mean, just from what I've done for as long as I've done it, the fire marshal aspect of it would be the one that required more background and education than the ordinance officer aspect.
Right.
And
Fire
that's,
code is way more technical than most any of our ordinances.
is fire marshal like a certification?
There's different qualifications under most fire marshal positions. NFPA, National Fire Protection Agencies, Inspector 1, Inspector 2, NFPA plan review, and then as well as the Fire 1 and 2 certifications. And
Okay. So they'd be qualified to do the plan reviews as well?
yes.
Okay.
The plan review from the fire perspective.
Right, I'm sorry, yes. Sprinkler systems,
Right.
egress points, stuff like that. Stuff that pertains to life safety.
Right.
So who would this person report to mainly then? Would it be here or would it be to you as the fire chief?
Depends on what part of the job you're talking about.
Okay. So would he be going back and forth between the two buildings? I mean,
No, you'd work out of
is that
here,
something you have
but
to work out?
the communication would be, you know, if there's a fire issue, then he at that moment, he's a fire marshal, you know, so it's kind of I would suspect that, to keep it simple, he could wear his fire identification stuff. I have no problem with that.
From my perspective, the position would be almost autonomous. I would need to be updated on a regular basis on where we're at, We are going to incorporate a shift or duty inspection program where each shift is doing 2 inspections. He would, mom and pop type store inspections, because we are required by state law to inspect properties in our jurisdiction because we're an organized fire department. But he would oversee that and make sure that compliance is taken, they're not overstepping their bounds, they're following up with their inspection programs, stuff like that.
You have a question?
Yes.
Kevin Curtis, 5140 Duck Lake Road. You guys just brought up a great point as to who this person would report to. I have 2 points to that. One, a gentleman wearing too many hats will render him less effective. The fire marshal, I think, is very important role, and I think a position that would be very useful and should report to him directly. I would then reflect back to Mr. Messenger as to the fine job that you've mentioned that he's done, and I'm not in question or anything of that. How effective would he have been if he's a fire marshal as well? I think wearing too many hats would maybe be less effective. I think really you probably need both positions. I would think that Messenger probably would still report to whoever he reports to in the city offices, but the fire marshal, I think is an important role, and I know it's an expense, but if one guy's wearing 2 hats and he's not effective at one aspect or the other, then what good is that?
Well, I think the 2 hat thing would be if he was expected to go out on call, that's wearing 2 hats. But an inspector's an inspector.
I would like to add to that, you're absolutely right, it is a very important job, and putting too much on that individual is not reasonable. I can tell you from experience, because I'm wearing that hat right now, as well as administration, as well as operations.
Well, you just mentioned the
as well as
specific
training.
trainings and stuff that the fire marshal would have to have. And so how do you then justify, I mean, the pay scale might even be significantly different between the two just because of the training involved and the investment in that. And so it really should be considering probably 2 guys for those positions, honestly.
If, we just reviewed, may I speak on the millage? I'm doing my darndest to stay within my 1.4 mils. For an operation as busy as we've become over the past 20 years, we've maintained the 1.4 mil fire operation budget. But we've gone from 400 runs a year to, we're gonna break 1,500 runs this year. My staff has been phenomenal providing the 24-hour coverage. But from my perspective, I just can't do it. I can hardly do it right now without the fire marshal position. Now we're gonna add a full-time position from my budget. I'd never be able to afford it right now.
And Chief, do you feel that we could attract a fire marshal based on the amount of hours we would have to offer in that specific task?
For just
For
our
just-
community, just the fire marshal
Right.
only? We're more of a bedroom community than we are a business or mercantile community. We don't have the gross number of inspections where I need an actual fire marshal for. Again, like I said earlier, the mom and pop type inspections that I plan on implementing with the duty crews, that's probably 70, more than that, it's probably 80% of our mercantile or business community are mom and pop type inspections. So the only remainder that he would be responsible for is 20%. Could I justify it? Yeah, because even if he was a fire marshal, he'd be more than just one position. They'd be a training officer or some other involvement in the department, so he has to wear multiple hats. I mean, that's just the nature of the game anymore in public safety. We're dealing with less and less money, and we're taking on more and more responsibilities.
Well, with due respect to that, I mean, we're allocating monies for a lot of other projects, and again, our safety here is paramount. I would think we could probably slide the fire department a little extra money to keep us safer, somehow.
That's called a
Takes a
millage.
millage.
Well,
Well, here's the other part of
I
it.
mean-
Mr. Messenger works 25 hours a week. You've got somebody working full-time, then the balance of it goes to fire inspection, and it can be double-dutied. It really is something that could be, I think, I just think it's a great idea. It's,
As I said before, a lot of the code of ordinances for the township coincide with the fire code, so to me, it seems like a practical evolution for a community our size
and the other part, if you, as things grow, then you break off and go in two different directions. But we do need to be respectful to the dollars and cents, that are involved there. The total cost for that individual, if we paid $20 an hour, would be about $69,723 a year.
Question, just to, I guess I want to make sure I understand this completely. You feel that it's an advantage to have one full-time person rather than you hire a part-time person and you hire a part-time person? I mean,
Yep.
so that's what we're doing. So the bill worked 25 hours, so if we got a person, it would be 15 hours then a week would go towards the fire marshal?
Again, if we split it 20/20,
Oh, okay.
a lot of the ordinances, again, coincide with fire
Right.
codes. So it's
You
just a
feel
matter of
that's an advantage
semantics
then.
and operations.
Okay.
You may have one week
understand
where,
that.
for some reason, it's not a full moon and everything goes real smooth and there's no work, nobody's complaining about stuff. But you've got fire things that you can go address. So it's a very flexy kind of a job. And we found that, I believe that with 25 hours, it's an adequate number of hours for an enforcement officer for our part of it. If you're the individual sitting in the same seat and the phone rings, it doesn't matter whether he's a fireman or not. His job is as an enforcement officer in two directions. One is fire and one is general ordinance. So you just address it at that time. I just thought at first I was a little hesitant, and then I started thinking through it and we talked about it. It makes great sense. You could hire two part-time people and eliminate all the health care and stuff. But I think that you're gonna have trouble finding, we won't have too much trouble finding a part-time ordinance officer. We're gonna have more trouble finding a part-time fire marshal. So this is.
That goes to a question I have for the chief. I can't see your face though.
I'm sorry.
Who's been doing the inspection since the fire marshal left? You have,
Oh, wow.
You have nobody on staff that can do that?
I have had one that we're trying to get certified as a fire inspector 1. When we send them to class over the summertime, the class is no joke. I was fortunate enough, in 2007, I took the class, I passed the class, I went to Ohio to be fire chief. Ohio didn't accept NFPA, they had their own little gig, so I took theirs, I let my license lapse. I had to go back and get recertified again. So I did pass the class again, and I'm again certified as a fire inspector 1, not a 2 or a plan review, but I have the fire inspector 1 certification. I was trying to get some of my staff trained to do it, but it's just, there's a lot to it. And if you're not in the books on a regular basis, it's kind of tough to navigate around all these.
How many inspections do you do in a year?
Right now,
I mean, we have so many, and we know there's a finite number, how many buildings we have to inspect every year. Most of them have to be done once a year.
mine are on a request basis only right now because I don't have the time.
There's 320 some odd businesses.
I have 364.
364,
on
yeah,
this program, that there's 364 buildings that are identified as businesses.
And are they supposed to be inspected every year?
Depending on the type of occupancy, 2-year maximum.
So some are, some aren't.
Not, currently, there's no way I can complete them all. That's why we're looking at the different operations, the shift inspections. Currently, we have 28 shifts a week. I'm sorry. We have 14 shifts a week, days and nights. We have 2 people on each shift. If we assign 2 shifts, and I don't have those numbers in front of me, if we assign 2 inspections to each shift, Sunday days, Sunday nights, Monday days, right on down the road, that would give us 28 inspections a month for the shifts, times 12. That would get us in the ballpark that we'd be a little more compliant. But right now, I just don't have, personally, I don't have the time to get all the inspections done, plus all the other projects I got going on right now.
I think it would be worth looking at, you know, at least putting together what you recommended. You know, to really try to help you out there, because especially when you talk about the CPC, you know, and that, I mean, there's a lot of reasons for this, and I think it could be a good idea, at least investigate.
Well, I'd like a comparison, you know, if you're gonna do a full-time work, you threw out 69,000, so that's what it would be to have one person. What would it cost to have 2? If you have retired firefighters who are willing to come in and do that, I'm sure they would be willing to do the half of it. You know, you had a retired firefighter interested in doing the ordinance enforcement, they probably already have the training to do the fire inspections, let, you know, part-time do that and look at, I'd like the comparison, I'd like to see the comparison before we okay it.
Well, we have an issue. October 13th, we're gonna be without a ordinance officer.
So you have a month, we have another meeting in 2 weeks.
We can do that.
I guess my question is if you're gonna pull qualified candidates, you wanna get that information out there for a minimal time period. I'm not sure how long you posted for my job, but we would be looking for somebody with a lot of qualifications and to get the best candidate. I think
Well, then post both jobs now, and with the caveat that we're gonna decide on one or the other. You know, post a full-time one, post a part-time one, 2 part-time ones.
I'm at your guys' whim. I'll do whatever I have to do. I just thought that this would, it's worked in other areas. City of Westland, which was a north community, the place I retired from, they did have the ordinance underneath the fire department. I believe Romulus has it under the fire department. Again, a lot of Wayne County, because that's what I'm more familiar with. Actually, Groveland has,
Fire department does ordinance enforcement,
yes,
the type that Bill Messenger does?
Yep.
yes.
That's interesting.
If you just broaden the job description for the fire marshal to include, you know.
Fire marshal, ordinance officer.
Yeah, so just
We
include
do
all
all.
those factors.
The nice thing about the idea to go ahead and advertise for it now and then bring it back to the board with a couple different options, we'll be able to determine if we think we can find somebody for a part-time fire marshal job.
Right.
You know, if we don't get any
If there's no
applications, then
responses.
we'll know that's not really a very good option.
Are we not going to look then for someone that could be full-time to do both?
Look for both.
I
full-time.
say advertise both.
Yeah, because you really want to get all the candidates in. Somebody may be applicable for part-time, but let's get candidates who look.
So you might get 2 really good part-time that you want to do that, or you might not, and you might want to get really, you know, you might get one really good application for a full-time person, so if you're worried about the delay, then do both now, and it buys us time.
Might actually get more candidates apply, period.
That's a good idea. I don't disagree.
That's not a bad idea at all. I kind of like it. Just see what comes out of the woodwork.
So we're not derailing either thought
Right.
process. We're just finding out which one is gonna more likely work. We've already explained to the 2 individuals that brought their stuff in yesterday that the requirements are potentially different. Could be a fire marshal position, could be, you know, an ordinance officer, so they're more than happy to leave their applications in on either one, so. And as you find out when you read applications, you kind of learn pretty quickly who's qualified and who's not. So I think it fits the bill. I think that what we'll do is you and I will put together the full-timer, and then we'll put together a part-time for each and see what we can come up with, put it out there, get it rolling.
All right.
All right, thank you. Item J. Gary, I'm gonna throw this one in your court because,
So we added the proposed amendment to minors in possession consuming alcohol ordinance.
yeah,
Okay, so as I explained in the letter, I don't know if the board even had a chance to look at it. I just came over to you on the email today. Our office has known for a long time that sometime before, between now and between 2016 and January 1 of 2018, that we're going to have to present you with an ordinance amendment to conform our township ordinance on minor in possession to changes to the state law. The most significant one was they took a first offense for a minor possessing consuming alcohol and took it down to a municipal civil infraction. And in other words, you don't want your township ordinance being charged as a crime when the state law charges it a civil infraction. And the second change, under the old law, where a first offense was a misdemeanor, a minor could go on a probationary status if they didn't have any prior minor in possession charges, and upon completing probation, earn a dismissal of the case. So they wouldn't have a criminal record for that, bad decision they may have made. But under this new law, the first misdemeanor charge, which is the second offense, they only get the probationary status if they don't have any prior alcohol or controlled substance related offenses. So those are the two basic changes. And everything was fine until, for me at least, until like Friday, when one of our prosecutors said to me, I thought you said that law was effective January 1st. I'm hearing from the Michigan Prosecuting Attorneys Association that it's going to be effective October 10th. I got back in the office on Monday, and sure enough, back in July, under the radar, the legislature changed the entire act that they adopted in December for one reason. They added a provision that minors that refused a request to take a breath test, that a court could order that, and the police officer could request that the court order it. That law was given an effective date of October 10th, 2017, hence the fire drill. So what you've got before you this evening is, we did a track changes version to show you the changes being made to our existing ordinance to comply and conform to the new state law, and then there's a clean version. The request is that someone move and the board vote to introduce that ordinance this evening and put it on your agenda for September 27th for adoption. That'll allow ample time to get it published with an effective date of October 10th, 2017. So we'll be following the state law at the same time. I can explain it in more detail if you wish, but that's the nuts and bolts of it. I don't like bringing things to you like the last minute, but I think it's always good to try to be in compliance with the state law in an area where there is supposed to be uniformity throughout the state. I follow developments in the legislature. I'm subscribed to several listservs that notify me of things in the municipal area. I never saw anything about this happening in July. In fact, my listserv for the Michigan municipal attorneys today was blowing up with this issue. I mean, we had already realized it, and the municipal attorneys from across the state are throwing questions around. So, is it effective October 10th, or is it going to January 1? The consensus seemed to be that October 10th was the effective date for all of the amendments, not just the amendment that says minors can be ordered to submit a breath test.
So we're just introducing this tonight?
Yes, just a motion to introduce the And Tammy was kind enough to give me an ordinance number even, 459, so.
I would move to introduce ordinance number 459, an ordinance to amend the Highland Charter Township Code regarding unlawful purchase, consumption, or possession of alcohol by minors to conform to changes in state law.
Support.
Okay, moved and supported. Vote, please.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
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 Motion carries.
Thank you.
Gary, thank you for getting to us, though. Don't have to apologize. It's, happened, stuff else. Appreciate it.
It was either that or just an emergency ordinance, and I hate those even
Yeah.
more.
All right, next item, number 9, list of bills dated 8/23/17 and 9/13/17, plus additional.
You didn't have any additions that
I
I
don't-
saw.
We did end up having any.
Okay.
I have a question on a couple of things on here. I see there's bills in here for the flag poles at the park, and I thought that was a scout project.
It is.
Eagle Scout project.
I'll comment on that.
Well, I have two questions. One, why didn't the board approve the project? Because we normally do that. And second of all, why is the township paying that? I thought that was part of the requirement for scouts to raise the money to pay, for the Eagle Scout.
A couple things happened there. They had additional funds. We came up with another $500 donation to help them. And the one American flag pole was actually bending. And so with the additional funds that were coming in, it was talked about the fact that we could use those additional funds and at the same time replace the pole that was really bent and put them all to be safe.
Those additional funds went into the township
Yeah.
funds?
Yeah.
Has, he brought in,
I don't know that.
okay, the scout was going to pull together the additional funds that he had collected, and he's gonna bring them and give them as a
I can find
payment
it.
against those items. What happened is, we had an opportunity to put the poles in at the same, actually the next day. As a matter of fact, I put the poles in myself. But we ordered the poles, they were delivered the next day, right after, I think it was Monday, we were out there with the scout, with Joe and I and the Eagle Scout candidate, and we looked at the fact that the new poles, in comparison to the old fiberglass poles, it'd be nice to have 2 new aluminum poles that were significantly taller than the others to be able to fly the American flag higher. So we called the flag company, flagpole company, and they delivered those the next day, and then I put them in.
Why didn't the board get a chance to say yay, nay, great job, it's on that project?
They did. He
What?
gave a whole presentation on it
When?
quite a while ago. I mean, he had
Shrubs and-
color
Yeah.
photographs of what it would look like and
I must
everything.
have been asleep at that one. I remember that.
Yeah, no,
It was a full
Yeah,
presentation.
he's here.
he had a Photoshop rendition
His
of
family
it.
was
and
here.
everything.
It was this year.
I was gonna say it was probably
A
late
while
spring.
ago. Okay.
Well, he's been
It
working on it.
was in the
a
spring, I
Okay.
think.
Yeah, it was probably mid to late spring.
You retired
For
too
the flag-
hard.
Yeah, why? For the flag poles, for all the flag poles?
Yeah.
Really? Okay. Well, the money part bothers me too, because I know that's a very important part of Eagle Scouts
Right. But he's,
project, is that they raise the money for that, so I hate to see us paying for those.
We added to that
Okay, well, that's
because
fair
the
enough,
2
too,
poles
but-
were not part of the original process. And he agreed, in fact, the AMVET's right, committed 500. I think there was about 400 or something left over from the completion of the project that he collected, and then we needed to order the poles and pay for the poles, so
In order to get it all done simultaneously, it was done with that intent. The existing US pole was actually bending and fractured a little bit. So we decided to make both the Michigan pole and the US pole matching. And
Well, that's
because,
a good idea.
and the
You know, I don't
labor-
have a problem with that. I just have a problem seeing us paying for things that,
yeah,
you know.
I'll check and see if he's, brought the money in, and I'll let the board know.
Will we?
If he hasn't, how much it was.
Will this result in us going over budget in the parks?
No. No, this was like $1,300 or $1,500.
Right. I think it would be ideal if questions like these that take a little research could be asked ahead of time of the board. So for instance, like Judy would be able to come to the board and bring the
And have an
information about whether the money had been turned in or not. That would really make this whole conversation a lot more productive.
yeah. I didn't know the money had not been given in my last comment.
But it may
He
have
just
been,
thought it
she
was,
doesn't know.
you know, take it in. There's no
Okay.
reason not to have to do it.
All right. Any motions to approve?
Oh, I would move to approve the list of bills as presented.
Support.
Moved and supported. Vote please.
Mrs. Chenoweth?
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes.
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 Motion carries.
All right, public comment. What time again?
Wait.
Any public comment? All right. Someone move to
I would
adjourn?
move to adjourn.
Support.
Moved and supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.